Hello, welcome everyone. Here we are in another basics culinary symposium tonight or today or whenever you're looking at this. If you're live, it's evening here around the Portland, Oregon area. A beautiful evening with a light sprinkle, a nice spring sprinkle, and this is a great dish for this time of year. And what we're looking at is a porchetta. And so this is a version of porchetta that is easy to do at home. It's a little bit of a simplified version of a classic Italian pork dish. I'm going to walk you through all the steps, and we're going to get a crispy skin, a nice moist interior, and a flavorful tender meat. If you have any questions during this session, you can go ahead and type them in to us, and we will answer them as best that we can live. So, and comments as well. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to first look at an herb paste. So porchetta traditionally is a dish that's made from whole pig, and porchetta, the word means little female pig. So if the little female pigs run away when people start talking about porchetta, because that would be what would be most commonly used for this dish, and it would be the whole pig, deboned, and all the internal organs and all that taken out, the head usually left on, and then stuffed with a whole bunch of herbs. And these herbs I have here, rosemary, thyme, sage, garlic, lemon. Those aren't herbs necessarily, but herbs and seasonings, and fennel seeds and fennel pollen is used a lot. And so this dish comes from central Italy, around the region of Rome, but it's cooked all over Italy and then all over the world now. And Italian immigrants brought it to America and set up shop with porchetta shops. And it's often called roast pork sandwiches. And porchetta is often served as a street food at fairs and festivals and things like that, just on a nice piece of bread and a fresh porchetta. One of the beautiful things about this dish is getting that crispy exterior and the nice tender interior. Now, it's a lot like in the United States, like a barbecue, like a whole hog kind of barbecue deal. So we're looking at slow roasting and a lot of flavor. So that flavor is going to come from these fresh herbs. So we're using a whole bunch of fresh herbs. And I was just out in that Oregon rain or sprinkle, picking some herbs from our herb garden outside the kitchen here. And I got these beautiful rosemaries. And you can see here, or you can't quite see, but let me make it so that you can see. You can see that here we have the rosemary starting to bloom, and it has these lovely purple blossoms. Anyway, so we have, we're going to put a whole bunch of herbs in a food processor and blend it up into a paste. So this is a really strong flavoring paste. So let's go ahead and let's start with the garlic. So garlic, 6 cloves of garlic or more if they're small cloves. I mean, really, this is one of those things you want to sort of create towards your piece of pork, depending on the size. And so for the pork shoulder, you're looking at a 3 to 4 pound piece, and we'll talk more about the meat once we get there. I want to you can put the paste together, even a day ahead, and you're fine. You can see here I had some garlic cloves sitting in some water, and this is just a great way to get the cloves easily peeled without having them stick to your knife. the peel stick to your knife or your fingers and stuff like that. Now, all this stuff is just sort of a rough chop because it's all going in a food processor, and we're just going to really whiz the heck out of it. So you don't need to get too crazy with the chopping on the board here. Now, the reason though that I do want to chop the herbs up a bit is to get good measurements with our 3 tablespoons of thyme, for example. So we're going to go ahead and I have some thyme leaves here. So here's some of that thyme that I just picked. So to get, I've done a whole bunch of thyme here before the class because it's pretty boring to watch me peel leaves off of thyme stems. But in case you're wondering how it goes, you take your thyme sprig and you go ahead and just run your finger down the stem and the leaves should just pop right off. Now, all these herbs, thyme, rosemary, and sage, they all grow really well in most regions. They are all originally from the Mediterranean, and thyme actually all 3 of these, and especially sage and thyme are known for both medicinal and culinary purposes, and they're also used for incense. Thyme was used by the ancient Egyptians for embalming mummies, and it has many healing properties. So now I'm just going to kind of chop this stuff up so I can fit it in a tablespoon. And really, with this sort of thing, you just can't have too many fresh herbs. So very fragrant. There's a lot of fragrant oils and so forth in these herbs, and that's really going to give the meat a lovely flavor. So we want about 3 tablespoons. And again, you know, if you're over by a bit, that is fine, because really you just want plenty of this paste. This is what's going to give us the excellent porchetta flavor. So there's our thyme. Now, one of the properties of thyme throughout history also is it's always tied to courage, and it would be in medieval times. It was given to knights when they went on a campaign to give them courage. It's a very well thought of plant, and it grows great in your garden, and it'll take off, and you'll just have plenty of thyme. All these herbs, again, sage, thyme, rosemary. So rosemary, same deal. You just want to kind of strip it off of the stem, and you can see I have these like pretty much trees of rosemary that I pulled out of the herb garden. And once again, I'm just going to give this a rough chop. Did knife skills recently, and we always talk about this, holding your knife, pinching it between your thumb and forefinger right at the top of the handle there. And that's the best spot to have control. And when I'm doing a choppy thing like this, I always like to make a fist just so my fingers aren't flopping around and accidentally get under the blade if I'm getting really enthusiastic. And also it gives me a little bit of weight to sort of just plop down there on top of the knife blade. And then when I'm re-evaluating my stack of herbs here, I use the back of the blade as to not dull my knife, the front, the sharp end, the sharp side. So you always want to kind of gather your herbs with back of the blade. Okay, so again, we're just looking for about 3 tablespoons of, uh, of rosemary. And again, rough chop is fine, and a little extra, that's fine too. Okay, so there's our rosemary. Rosemary is part of the sage family. Thyme is related to oregano. So really, we have 2 different kinds of sages, and there's a lot of varieties of thyme and sage around. So the sage itself, I have some extra leaves. We're calling for 10 sage leaves, but some of these were kind of small, so I'm adding extra. And so for the sage leaves, we're just going to give them a rough chop and throw those in the old food processor. Now sage, again, Mediterranean herb, but also there's some varieties that originated in South America, and we see like sage being a sacred plant for Native Americans. They burning the sage, and people often use sage to get rid of evil spirits and bad vibrations and things like that, or sometimes just as an incense because it smells really nice. It also has a lot of great health benefits. It's good for your brain function, which could be the origin of like sage advice or the sage, the wise sage. It helps with your oral health as well. You can see like sage toothpaste and things like that. And it lowers cholesterol. So it does a lot of great things. And all of these 3 herbs have a lot of kind of medicinal properties as well. And very importantly, as far as in the culinary tradition, they have antimicrobial and preserving properties. So so that's why we see this thyme and sage and rosemary in sausages and stuff like that, because before refrigeration, we're looking at preserving meats, and that's a lot of the reason why these herbs came into play. Okay, so fennel seed here. So fennel grows wild in Italy, and it's really to me it's an integral part of porchetta flavor profile. But you don't have to have fennel. Some parts of Italy they don't use fennel in the porchetta, and that's simply because maybe it's not native to that region. But it is really nice, and if you can get your hands on some fennel pollen, that's lovely, and you can rub that onto your interior of the porchetta as well. Fennel seeds are widely available. That's what I'm using here. You're going to want to pre-crush them a little bit, and there's a few good ways to do that, and I have a couple here. One is a mortar and pestle, and this is a great tool to have around. If you don't have one, you should think about getting one, because it's a really nice way to fresh seeds and things like that, and you can get a lot of flavor, really nice intense flavors when you're using a freshly crushed seed. And you can see it goes pretty quick, and I crush that stuff up. And this was 2 tablespoons of seeds. So that stuff's crushed, and then I have some more here. And what I'm going to use for that is a good old skillet. And the skillet crush is simply just get some weight on there and get down on it, and use like the kind of the edge of the skillet a little bit, and really smack them down, and that'll give you a good crush as well. And another thing you can do is a knife. And they'll kind of fly around a little bit, but you can just kind of chop up your seeds, and that works also. So you just want to kind of get them pre-crushed a bit because the blades of the food processor are going to miss that a little bit. Okay, next we have a teaspoon of salt is going in there, half a teaspoon of black pepper. We've got a teaspoon of ground mustard and a half teaspoon of red chili flakes. It gives it a little nice little bite. And I'm going to go ahead and grind all this stuff up. And then I'm going to add the olive oil slowly, which will create a paste. So we're just drizzling the olive oil into and this is a 1/4 cup of olive oil. So once the olive oil gets in there, you're going to find that you might want to scrape the sides a bit, get that stuff I usually scrape the sides and the bottom of the Cuisinart or food processor bowl. The spatula works well for that. So we're just trying to get a nice kind of spreadable paste, kind of like a pesto. And it's looking good. And this is a really intense flavor. One thing, you know, well, I'm going to give it another quick wheel. One thing I like to do with this is give it a little taste because it's super intense in a good way, but it's a very concentrated flavor. And it really wakes you up. Woo! Now I'm awake. I'm just going to throw this into a bowl. Yeah, it's delicious already. I mean, you get all that nice garlic and chili flake. And of course the herbs. Sage, another deal with sage is they say it grows best where the wife in a couple is the dominant partner, and so again, another more sage advice, right? Okay. Oh, and then of course the lemon zest. So I forgot, but it's never too late to throw some lemon zest in there. And we're doing the zest of 1 lemon, and this should have gone in the food processor bowl as well, but you know, we'll just roll with it. It's going to be just great. And so this will give us, the lemon zest has a lot of those, a lot of citrus oil in it, and it carries a whole lot of flavor. So you can just reserve the lemon itself for future endeavors. And then we'll just stir that in really well, and it will be just great. But yeah, you can go ahead and throw that lemon zest into your food processor bowl with the rest of the stuff, if you think of it. Okay, so now we've got our complete paste. And this is a zester, by the way, and these are real, this is a microplane, and these are really great. Again, a good tool to look at if you don't have one, zesting any citrus or ginger. It's really great for ginger. All right. So we have our paste. Now let's go ahead and look at the piece of meat. So all this, like I mentioned before, you can make the paste ahead of time and just cover it and put it in the refrigerator, and it'll be good for a day or two. And if you want to do it ahead of time, definitely you can do it hours before. And it is, even though our recipe and card and these beautiful recipe cards are available in our basics markets, and we make these and give them away for free. So if you're interested, or maybe you've already seen this, and then at a store, and then also these are available online, all these recipes that we do the classes for. So have a look at basicsmarket.com for more recipes, including this porchetta recipe. But on our recipe card, we talk about preparing the pork shoulder first, and it doesn't matter too much. You can go either way. You can prepare the pork shoulder first, the meat, and then make your rub and rub it on, which I do half the time. But also sometimes it's nice to have the paste ready and then do the shoulder. So that's what we're doing here, and I thought it made sense for this demonstration. Okay. I'm grabbing a plastic board because I can sterilize this one in the dishwasher, and that is always nice when working with meats. So you can see I have some twine here, and we're going to go ahead and bind up the piece of pork. I have a pork shoulder, so I got this from the one of our meat markets. Basics has great meat. This is organic pork, and I'm using the shoulder. So just to go back to the porchetta, right? It means little female pig. So traditionally it would be the whole pig, but here we're doing kind of a version that we can easily do at home, and the shoulder is just a really nice piece to use here. The shoulder has a lot of really good fat that makes the meat tender, gives it flavor. The size is nice for something like this. And you're looking at, you want to usually use a 3 to 4 pounder. If you're doing a larger, you can do larger. It will just take longer to cook. And it looks like we have a question. Yes.
Classmate is asking if you could use pork tenderloin.
Yeah, so someone is asking if you can use pork tenderloin for this dish, and sure. If you use a pork tenderloin, it's going to be leaner. It's going to cook a lot quicker, and tenderloins are usually smaller. So you just factor all that stuff. Really, you could use any piece of pork, because again, this is coming from the whole hog, and we're just bringing it down to something a little smaller. But I prefer the shoulder because of the result of the fat that's in there melting away and giving us. And then also one thing you'll get with the shoulder, which you won't find with the tenderloin, is the cap. And so part of the dish, the porchetta, and what makes it porchetta in a way is the crispy exterior, and what you're going to get with this fat cap here is that crispy exterior. So speaking to that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut we're going to indent a little bit into this. We're going to go ahead and score it. So I'm going to score in kind of a crisscross pattern. Now, this is a good opportunity. If you have a boning knife, go ahead and grab a boning knife. It can work well for this. It's nice and sharp, and you can be accurate with your scoring. But a chef's knife is also just great for this job. And so first I'm scoring across diagonally, and then I'm going to go across diagonally the other way. And I just want to go, about a ½ inch in or so. And I like this sort of getting these diamond shapes going. It sort of looks like the outside of a pineapple or something. And we're going to be rubbing salt into that. And this just allows everything to cook really nicely. And it's going to give us a cool pattern after it's cooked up. Okay, so when you get your pork shoulder, it has that twine already on it, and that's usually because often it has already kind of, maybe it's open a little bit, and sometimes you'll get a pork shoulder that is actually cut all the way through, and so that's where you would start your butterflying or booking. Sometimes it's called, where we're going to kind of lay this out. Okay, so again, a boning knife isn't a bad way to go here. So what you want to look at is the natural, where that cut might be already, or where it's kind of coming apart already. And you want to look at the form and then decide which direction to go in, because what we're going to do is open this up and then roll it. And then again, keep in mind, you want this fat cap on the outside. So for this guy, I'm seeing it open this way, and then I can do slices across like this when it's done. So I'm going to go ahead, and you can see it's already sort of started here. So I'm just going to use that as my guide, and that'll be my first cut. And then it gets a little bit, it's a little uneven on this side, so that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and now cut across again. And what I'm looking for is just a continuous strip of somewhat even thickness. And if there's a little hole or something like that, that's okay, because it's going to get rolled, right? And it's fine. But mainly we just wanted to see that. And then here's that fat cap. And look, here's a little more fat cap. Once it's laid out, you can finish if there's some you didn't get to. And now again, we're going to score. And you can go nice and deep, because we want to get that paste all in there, all up in there. And so you can see I almost have like these cubes, and I have a lot of space in between that I can rub stuff. And what I'll be rubbing first is the salt. So here's another teaspoon of salt. So in the beginning of this recipe, we had, we're dividing 2 teaspoons of salt. The first teaspoon is in our paste, and this is the second teaspoon. And so I'm going to go with about half of this, so half a teaspoon on the interior, and just give it a nice rubbing. And then a half a teaspoon on the exterior. And same thing, and get into all those little nooks and crannies. Okay, and now I want to look at where my fat cap is, and then I know I'm going to want to roll, towards that, so that that ends up on the outside of our roast. I'm just going to, where that hole was in there, I just kind of put it together so that I can get a good even rub. This smells so good, and it really smells great, like while it's cooking, the aromatic of it. And you can see why this stuff has through history been used as incense, these herbs. and you kind of get a nice pork incense as this roasts. So we're doing all this, right? And you're going to do this at least a day before you cook it off. And that's to let all the flavors really get in there. So you want to do this a day ahead, at least a day ahead before you plan on cooking and eating it. So you can even do it 2 days ahead and really let this stuff sink in because you want the flavor to get in there. Okay, so I've really rubbed it in, right? Looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll. And I do a pretty, you want to do a fairly tight roll. Keep it all together and continuing to sort of rub it as I roll. Rub and roll. And then you have a beautiful roast. It's a little spot to open up a little bit. Seeing little places on the fat cap to get a few more nice cuts. Okay, so you can see that that's nice, and here I just try to sort of even it out a bit, and it's beautiful, right? And it's like meat pineapple. So now for the twine. So I've cut some twine. This is butcher's twine I'm using here, and you can really tie this up any way that works for you. I'm going to show you one technique, and it all depends on the shape of your roast and how you're feeling, all these things. But this is a pretty good way to do it for a kind of a longer one like this, a longer roast. So first I'm going to go ahead and tie it around one end and get it locked on there. And the main thing here is we just want to hold this together. So it really doesn't have to look beautiful, although I am going to try to have it look beautiful tonight, but we'll see how it goes. Then I just wrap the string around underneath and go through again. So we're kind of, and it is a bit of a process, but what we're doing is we're kind of making a net in a way. And so here we go, and you just tighten it up, and then we're going to do that again, around and through. And yeah, this is a good way to tie up all kinds of things, roasts. And again. And you can just kind of do the length. You could, of course, you could do this other ways. You could cut several pieces and kind of tie. Now, so we've got it towards the end here, close enough where I'm going to flip it, and then you can see where my under ties are, 1, 2, 3, 4. And here, I'm just going to go through. And this is going to create a little bit of tension on this side. And again, it's like I mentioned, it's kind of like a net or something like that, a very wide net. And yeah, but this is, you can play around with what works for you. I like this method. And then what you can do is you can come back through And if you want, go through it one more time on top, although it really is already secure. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but you get the idea. You could go through again and get a little, get it a little more secure, what have you. So here I'm going to go ahead and cut that off, tie it off. You want to get it nice and secure, good and tight. And this is really, you just need something that's going to hold your roast together while it cooks. And then as soon as it starts to cook, it's just going to hold itself together, right? As it firms up. So there we go. So this is going to go in covered in the refrigerator for at least overnight. Up to 2 days is cool. And then let's pretend that happened and I'm ready to put it in the oven. So when you're ready to roast it, you want to go ahead and preheat your oven to 250 degrees. This is a slow and low sort of cook on this. And a roast like this one is close to 4 pounds. It could take up to like 4 hours. And you want to keep checking it, after 2.5 hours, really kind of check it with a thermometer. If you have a probe thermometer, those are really excellent for cooking meat, something like this, a digital thermometer. And for pork, you can go anywhere over 145 degrees is you're safe to eat it, but with a cut like the shoulder here, and by the way, sometimes the shoulder is called the pork butt, sometimes Boston butt, and that's just because it's the butt of the shoulder, not the rear end of the pork. So you may see it called that as well in some markets. Now, but what's going to happen is it cooks and gets more up towards 165, 70, and even 180 degrees is great. You get more into that fall apart sort of deal. And because it's at a low temperature, it's going to be nice and tender and it won't get dried out. Yes, it looks like we have a question.
Yeah, Anthony's asking what else you can do while roasting it to keep it moist.
Oh, well, Anthony is asking, are there other methods to keep it moist while it's roasting? And again, you have the fat cap, and that's sort of the job, and that's why we want to keep the fat cap on top, because it's actually going to create sort of a shield, and the fat itself is going to come through the meat, and that's going to keep it all nice and juicy. Now, you could tint it with foil, but then you're going to miss out a little bit on the crispiness of the top. So really, you don't need to do much else. It's all built in, so to speak. What you could, if you like, what's going to happen is the excess fats and drippings are going to be in your pan. And I like to use a skillet for this one, but any sort of roasting pan is good, but the skillet will really collect those extra drippings, and you could brush it once in a while with the drippings, and that would be kind of cool, and that would help out maybe with a little extra juiciness, and also give it nice color. So there it is. It's a real beauty. I'm going to put that in the oven right tomorrow for at 250 degrees for probably about 4 hours on this one. Okay, now, earlier today, I roasted a porchetta, and I have it here. So let's have a look. Now, after you've gotten to the temperature you want, an internal temperature, and you can kind of stop like at like 170 something, because you're going to crank up the heat to 450 degrees to finish it, and that'll take care of the rest of the cook. So here's after, and we have that nice crispy exterior. That is the beauty of the porchetta. And I have my twinage, which we're going to cut off. And you can see it's all set up. And so it should hold well. And it smells just great. It really smells nice. Well, again, it smells nice while it's roasting. Yeah, we have a question.
Yeah, Diane's asking if you could add potatoes at some point to the roast with the pork in the same pan.
Ooh. So Diane is asking if you can add potatoes to the pan while the pork is roasting. And yeah, that would be really neat. This pork is great for sandwiches, right? It's great with potatoes. That's a good one. Of course, pasta, gnocchi, which this advertisement for the next class, early next month, we're doing a gnocchi class. So you could really do a great Italian meal if you made your own gnocchi and made this. Be delightful. You could put it on a salad. Salads are a good way to go with something like this too, or greens. This is a good picnic food. All kinds of things. It's good warm, and it's good cold. Or room temperature as well. Okay, let's see how this porchetta turned out. Pretty nice. So that's what I look for. A little spiral like that it's nice when that happens, and looks like we got that. And it is fall apart tender. So yeah, really pretty, right? And I have a handy And before you put it in the oven, it's good to take it out of the refrigerator while your oven is preheating and just let it come to room temperature a little bit. And that will make for a more even cook. And that's true of any roast. You sort of want to do that. So let's have a bite of this lovely porchetta. Really tender, cuts with the butter knife. Delightful. I took a really big bite because I'm quite hungry. Excuse me. Anyway, so delicious, full of herbaceous goodness. Get a little bit of the crackle, right? The crackling on the top. We have that lovely tender interior, all those herbs and garlic, chili, all that comes through. The lemon zest, which luckily I remembered to put in at the last minute there. And very simple, but you do want to plan ahead and get it to that rolled stage the day before you plan on cooking it off, and then give yourself some time to cook it. And then that time you could make fresh pasta, you make fresh gnocchi, or cut up a bunch of vegetables. And I like that idea of putting maybe some vegetables to roast in the pan with the porchetta. That could be nice. Um, Anyway, thanks so much for joining me for this basics cooking class. Um, as I mentioned before, our next class will be all about making your own gnocchi, and I'm going to do two recipes. Um, one just real classic, which is just potatoes and water, and or sorry, potatoes and flour. And I was thinking of the potatoes cooking in the water. And then another one that is using sweet potatoes and has a few more ingredients in there. Um, that's really nice. So anyway, Know Your Gnocchi is a class coming up. And then we have more classes following that on Wednesday evenings if you're joining us live. Otherwise, these are posted afterwards. On our website, basicsmarket.com. And there you can find recipes, cooking how-to videos, and of course, go check out our markets, pick up a lovely piece of organic pork at the market there, as well as any vegetables and herbs you might need. And keep enjoying cooking and happy cooking. Thank you so much.